Have you ever stopped and wondered why would something as small and seemingly insignificant as an insect be mentioned in Islam? Out of the countless creatures created by Allah, why do certain tiny beings hold such deep lessons, warnings, and even spiritual significance for us? We often overlook insects. We crush them, ignore them, or see them as nothing more than pests. But what if I told you that some of these very creatures are connected to divine wisdom? That they were mentioned in Islamic teachings, not by accident, but with purpose, guidance hidden in the smallest of creations. Islam is a complete way of life. It doesn't just guide us in big matters like worship and morality, but even in how we perceive the smallest parts of creation. Allah says in the Qur'an that He is not shy to present examples even of a mosquito. This teaches us something powerful. Size does not determine significance. Sometimes the smallest creatures carry the biggest messages. In today's world, we are constantly searching for meaning, peace, and signs from Allah. Yet we often miss what is right in front of us. These insects are not just creatures, they are reminders. Reminders of humility, obedience, consequences, and divine power. Each one carries a lesson that can transform the way we see our lives. Today we will explore 3 insects that hold importance in Islam. You will discover how one teaches unity and discipline, another serves as a warning against arrogance, and the third reveals Allah's absolute control over life and death. These are not just stories. They are reflections meant to awaken our hearts. So stay with me till the end, because one of these lessons might change the way you look at even the smallest moment in your life. And if you want more powerful reminders like this, don't forget to subscribe to menkguidance. The mention of the ant in the Quran is not just a passing reference. It is a moment filled with depth, reflection, and a quiet yet powerful lesson for every believer. Allah narrates the incident where Prophet Sulaiman, peace be upon him, a king blessed with immense power, knowledge, and even the ability to understand the language of animals, was traveling with his army. As they approached a valley of ants, a single ant spoke out, warning the others to quickly retreat into their homes so they would not be crushed unknowingly. This scene, though simple on the surface, carries layers of meaning that many of us overlook. Think about the awareness of that tiny creature. It was not concerned only with its own survival, it thought about the entire community. It recognized danger, communicated it effectively, and took responsibility. In a world where humans often struggle to look beyond their own needs, this small insect becomes a teacher of selflessness and leadership. It shows us that true awareness is not just about seeing what is in front of you, but understanding your role within a larger system. Every action you take can impact others, and with that comes responsibility. Even more striking is the reaction of Prophet Sulaiman, peace be upon him. Despite his unmatched authority, he did not ignore or belittle the ant. Instead, he smiled and expressed gratitude to Allah. This is where the real transformation lies. Greatness in Islam is not defined by dominance or control, but by humility. When someone at the highest level of power can pause and appreciate the words of an ant, it teaches us that arrogance has no place in a believer's heart. If we cannot learn from the smallest of creations, then we have not truly understood the essence of knowledge. The ant also represents discipline and organization. It works tirelessly, stores for the future, and operates within a structured system. There is no chaos, no selfishness, no laziness. Every ant knows its role and fulfills it without complaint. Compare this to our own lives. How often do we delay responsibilities, ignore our duties, or act without thinking of consequences? The ant silently reminds us that success, both in this world and the hereafter, requires consistency, effort, and awareness of purpose. But perhaps the most subtle lesson lies in the phrase, lest they crush you unknowingly. The ant did not accuse the army of wrongdoing. It recognized that harm can sometimes happen without intention. This teaches us to be careful, not just about what we do knowingly, but also about the unintended consequences of our actions. How many times have we hurt someone without realizing it? How often do we move through life without considering who might be affected by our words or behavior? This reflection should create a sense of caution within us. A gentle awareness that our actions, no matter how small, carry weight. And if we fail to develop this awareness, we risk becoming careless, even destructive without intending to be. That is where the shift begins. Because while the ant teaches us responsibility and humility, there are other signs in creation that confront us more directly, forcing us to face our weaknesses in ways we cannot ignore. The example of the fly mentioned in the Quran is one of the most striking reminders of human limitation and the illusion of control that we often live under. Allah presents a powerful challenge. Those whom people call upon besides Him cannot create even a fly. And if a fly takes something from them, they cannot retrieve it. This is not just a statement, it is a confrontation. It forces us to rethink everything we assume about power, ability, and independence. Pause for a moment and reflect on this. Humanity has reached incredible heights. Advanced technology, scientific breakthroughs, artificial intelligence, exploration of space. Yet despite all of this, we remain arduous when it comes to creating life from nothing. Not even something as small, as fragile, and as seemingly insignificant as a fly can be, brought into existence by human hands. And even more humbling is the second part of the message. If a fly takes something from us, we are unable to reclaim it. Whether it is a drop of food, a piece of sweetness, or even a moment of control, we are left powerless. This example strips away arrogance layer by layer. It reminds us that our strength is temporary and our capabilities are limited. We may feel in control of our lives, our environment, and even other people, but all of that control is fragile. A tiny fly can disturb our peace, disrupt our focus, and even carry harm that we cannot fully prevent. It is almost ironic how something so small can expose something so big within us, our dafif, our dependence, and our need for Allah. The deeper lesson here is not about the fly itself, but about what it represents. It depends what it is. It represents the reality that anything we rely on besides Allah is weak. No matter how powerful something appears, whether it is wealth, status, or influence, it is ultimately fragile. The Quran is teaching us to detach our hearts from false sources of strength and redirect them toward the one who is truly in control of everything. And yet, despite this clear sign, many people continue to live in heedlessness. We chase dunya, we build our identities around temporary things, and we forget how easily everything can slip away. Just like a fly can take something from us without effort, life can take away what we love in an instant. Health, wealth, opportunities, leaving us with nothing but the realization of how dependent we always were. This should awaken a sense of humility within us, but also a sense of khuf, a subtle faith. Now that keeps us grounded. Not a fear that paralyzes, but one that protects us from arrogance. Because arrogance is dangerous, it blinds the heart, distances us from truth, and makes us forget who we really are. And when arrogance grows unchecked, it leads to something even more serious. A rejection of signs, a questioning of divine wisdom, and a refusal to reflect. That is where the next lesson becomes even more powerful. Because sometimes Allah uses something even smaller than a fly to shake the hearts of those who refuse to see. When Allah mentions the mosquito in the Quran, it is not merely to draw attention to a tiny insect, but to challenge the way we think, perceive, and respond to His signs. Allah makes it clear that He is not shy to present the example of a mosquito, or even something smaller than it. For the believer, this increases faith, but for those who reject, it raises doubts and questions. And that contrast itself is a powerful reflection of the state of the human heart. The mosquito is one of the smallest and most overlooked creatures, yet its impact is undeniable. It can disturb your sleep, irritate your body, and in many cases carry diseases that affect entire populations. This alone should make us pause. How can something so small have such a powerful effect? The answer lies not in the mosquito itself, but in the command of Allah. It is a living proof that power does not belong to size, appearance, or strength. It belongs entirely to the Creator. This example quietly dismantles a common mindset that only big things matter. We often associate greatness with what is visible, dominant, and impressive. But Islam teaches us the opposite. Sometimes the smallest things are the most significant because they reveal truths we would otherwise ignore. The mosquito becomes a mirror. It reflects our dafif, our vulnerability, and our inability to control even the tiniest aspects of our existence. But there is something even deeper happening here. Allah does not just present the example, He also describes the reaction to it. Those who believe understand that it is the truth from their Lord. They reflect, they accept, and their iman grows stronger. But those who reject respond differently. They question, they mock, and they ask, what does Allah intend by this example? This is not a question of curiosity. It is a question rooted in arrogance. And this is where the warning becomes subtle, yet powerful. The issue is not the example itself, but the coglib that receives it. The same sign that guides one person can mislead another. The same mosquito can be a source of reflection for one heart and a source of doubt for another. This teaches us that guidance is not just about what we see. It is about how we choose to respond to what we see. It is about how we choose to respond to what we see. If a person constantly dismisses small signs, they slowly train their heart to ignore bigger ones. If they mock what they do not understand, they close the door to wisdom. And over time, this attitude builds a barrier between them and guidance itself. This is why the example of the mosquito is not just a lesson in power, it is a test of humility. It reminds what it is. It reminds us to approach every sign with sincerity, to reflect instead of reject, and to remain open to learning, no matter how small, unexpected the source may be. Because the moment we start thinking that something is too insignificant to matter, we risk overlooking a message that could have changed our lives. Its form have mazed our lives. And once that habit of ignoring signs takes root, it doesn't stop at insects or small examples. It begins to affect how we see everything around us. The world which is filled with guidance starts to feel empty. The signs which were once clear become distant. And without realizing it, a person begins to drift slowly, quietly, away from the very pool. Pros they were created for. When we step back and look at these examples together, the ant, the fly, and the mosquito, we begin to see a pattern that goes far beyond individual lessons. It becomes clear that Islam is not just teaching us about these creatures, but training us to observe, reflect, and understand the world with depth. Nothing in creation is random. Every detail, no matter how small, is placed with precision and purpose. But the question is not whether these signs exist. The real question is whether we are truly harbor in our hearts to recognize them. Allah constantly invites us in the Qur'an to look, to think, and to reflect, not just at the sky, the mountains, or the oceans, but even at the smallest forms of life. This tells us something profound. Guidance is not limited to grand, extraordinary moments. It is embedded in everyday life, in things we pass by without a second thought. The ant moving on the ground, the fly hovering around, the mosquito in the quiet of the night, these are not interruptions to our lives. They are part of the message itself. But here is where the deeper wisdom unfolds. These small creations are consistent. They act according to the system Allah has designed for them. They do not question their purpose. They do not deviate from their roles. And they do not become distracted. In contrast, humans who have been given intellect, choice, and awareness are the ones who struggle the most with purpose. We hesitate, we doubt, we delay, and sometimes we completely ignore the path laid out for us. This contrast should shake us, even if only slightly. How is it that a creature so small fulfills its purpose without fail, while we, who have been honored with guidance, often fall short? The answer lies in heedlessness. We see, but we do not observe. We hear, but we do not listen. We live, but we do not reflect. And slowly, this lack of reflection turns into a habit, a dangerous one. Because when a person stops reflecting on small signs, they begin to lose sensitivity to larger truths. Their qalb becomes less responsive, less aware, less alive. What once would have reminded them of Allah now feels ordinary. What once would have moved them now feels distant. And this is not something that happens suddenly. It happens gradually, silently, almost unnoticed. The wisdom in these small creations is meant to prevent exactly that. They are like gentle reminders placed throughout our day, calling us back before we drift too far. They whisper lessons of humility, dependence, and purpose. But if those whispers are ignored again and again, they begin to fade. And when they fade, a person may continue living, continuing their routine, continuing their pursuits, but something inside starts to weaken. A disconnect forms, subtle at first, but growing over time. The world remains the same, the signs remain the same, but the ability to feel their impact begins to disappear. This is where the real danger lies, not in ignorance, but in becoming comfortable with that ignorance. Because once a person reaches that point, they no longer seek meaning in what surrounds them. They stop questioning, stop reflecting, and stop growing. And without even realizing it, they begin to move through life on the surface, missing the depth that was always there. And that raises a serious concern. If these signs are constantly around us, guiding us, warning us, calling us back, then what does it say about us if we continue to walk past them without ever stopping to truly see? When these reflections begin to settle in the heart, they naturally lead us to examine our own daily lives. How we move, how we think, and how we respond to the countless signs surrounding us. It is easy to feel inspired in a moment, to acknowledge the lessons of the ant, the fly, and the mosquito, but the real question is, what happens after that moment passes? Do these realizations translate into change, or do they fade as quickly as they came? Most of us live at a pace that leaves little room for reflection. Our days are filled with routines, responsibilities, distractions, and endless scrolling through things that hold no real value. We wake up, go through our tasks, interact with people, and return to rest only to repeat the same cycle again. In this constant motion, we rarely pause long enough to truly observe what is around us. And when we don't observe, we don't reflect. When we don't reflect, we don't grow. The signs of Allah are not absent from our lives. They are present in abundance. But their impact depends on the state of our awareness. A person who is mindful will see meaning in everything. A small act of kindness will remind them of mercy. A moment of difficulty will remind them of patience. Even the presence of an insect will remind them of the lessons we have discussed. But a person who is distracted will pass by all of this without noticing anything at all. This is where the danger quietly begins. Not in doing something openly wrong, but in becoming disconnected. Because when the heart is disconnected, actions lose their sincerity. Worship becomes routine rather than meaningful. Du'as becomes routine rather than conversations with Allah. Worship becomes routine rather than conversations with Allah. And life itself starts to feel empty, even when everything appears to be in place. Think about how often we react without thinking. We get irritated quickly. We speak without considering our words. We make decisions based on impulse rather than reflection. All of this stems from a lack of awareness. All of this stems from a lack of awareness. If we were truly mindful, if we carried the lessons of even the smallest creations within us, our behavior would naturally become more measured, more thoughtful, more aligned with the values Islam teaches us. The ant showed us discipline and concern for others. Imagine applying that in our interactions, being aware of how our actions affect those around us. The fly reminded us of our weakness. Imagine carrying that humility into our daily decisions, recognizing that we are always in need of Allah. The mosquito showed us the power of the smallest things. Imagine living with that awareness, never underestimating the impact of even a small action, whether good or bad. But ignoring these lessons has consequences. Not immediate, visible ones, but gradual internal ones. The heart becomes heavier, less responsive, less connected. A person may continue functioning, continue achieving, continue appearing successful, but internally, something is missing. A sense of purpose begins to fade, replaced by restlessness and dissatisfaction. And the most concerning part is how normal this state begins to feel. When disconnection becomes familiar, a person stops seeking reconnection. They adapt to a life without depth, without reflection, without true awareness. And once that happens, even the clearest signs can pass by unnoticed. This is why these small reminders are so important. They are opportunities to break that cycle, to pause, to think, to realign. But those opportunities are only beneficial if we choose to act on them. Because awareness alone is not enough. It must lead to change. And that brings us to something even more serious. Because once a person recognizes these signs and understands their meaning, they are no longer the same as someone who remains unaware. With understanding comes responsibility. And the way we respond to that responsibility determines everything that follows. When a person reaches this stage, where the signs are no longer hidden, where the lessons are understood, and where the heart has felt even a glimpse of their meaning, something fundamental changes. They are no longer simply observing the world. They are now accountable for how they respond to ability. This is where the weight of responsibility quietly settles in, not as a burden meant to overwhelm, but as a trust that defines the very purpose of our existence. Allah has given us intellect, awareness, and the ability to reflect gifts that distinguish us from the rest of creation. The ant fulfills its role without question. The fly exists within its limits. The mosquito carries out its function without hesitation. But human beings have been given choice. And with that choice comes imtihan, a test that unfolds in every moment of our lives. Every sign we see, every reminder we encounter is part of that test. It is not just about recognizing the lesson. It is about what we do after recognizing it. This is where many people falter. It is possible to understand something deeply, to feel its impact in the heart, and yet fail to act upon it. Knowledge without action becomes a silent witness against us. It is no longer ignorance. It is neglect. And neglect, when repeated, slowly transforms into something more dangerous, indifference. A state where the heart no longer feels the urgency to change, no longer responds to reminders, and no longer seeks closeness to Allah with sincerity. The subtle warning here is not loud or immediate. It does not come with a sudden consequence that forces attention. Instead, it unfolds gradually. A person delays a change they know they should make. They ignore a reminder they once found powerful. They postpone a good deed, thinking there will always be time. And slowly, without realizing it, the distance between them and Allah begins to grow. What makes this even more serious is how deceptive it can be. On the outside, everything may seem normal, life continues, routines remain intact, and there may even be moments of ibadah. But internally, something begins to weaken. The connection loses its depth. The sincerity begins to fade, and the heart, which was once alive with reflection, starts to become less responsive. This is why accountability in Islam is not just about major actions, it is about consistency and awareness. It is about staying connected to the lessons Allah places in our path, no matter how small they may seem. Because those small reminders are what protect the heart from drifting too far. They act as anchors, keeping us grounded in a world full of distractions. And yet the reality remains that not everyone holds on to these anchors. Some let go, not all at once, but piece by piece. A missed reflection here, an ignored sign there, until eventually the connection becomes so weak that even the strongest reminders struggle to make an impact. That is the moment of real concern. Not when a person makes the mistake, but when they stop caring about correcting it. Not when they fall short, but when they no longer feel the need to rise again. Because at that point, the issue is no longer about actions. It is about the state of the heart itself. And this leaves us with a question that cannot be ignored. When Allah has surrounded us with signs, when He has shown us lessons through even the smallest of His creation, and when He has given us the ability to understand them, then what excuse will we have if we choose to walk away unchanged? In the end, what we've learned today is something truly powerful. Islam is not just about grand events or major acts of worship. It is a way of seeing the world through the lens of meaning and purpose. Even the smallest creatures carry messages that can transform our hearts. The ant showed us unity, discipline, and care for others. It reminded us that true strength lies in working together and being mindful of those around us. The fly humbled us, breaking the illusion of human power and exposing how limited we truly are without Allah. And the mosquito, it left us in awe of Allah's control, proving that even the tiniest creation can carry immense impact. These are not just stories to hear and forget. They are reminders meant to stay with us. The next time you see an ant walking with purpose, a fly buzzing around, or even a mosquito, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what is Allah teaching me right now? Because guidance doesn't always come in big, obvious ways. Sometimes it comes quietly, in the smallest forms, waiting for those who are willing to reflect. And if you begin to see the world like this, everything changes, your faith deepens, your qalban finds peace, your connection with Allah becomes stronger than ever before. So don't ignore these signs. Embrace them, reflect on them, and let them bring you closer to the one who created them all. And for more reminders that touch the heart and awaken the soul, stay connected with menkguidance.